Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan's two top advisors have resigned from their positions following criticism from the opposition and his own party, Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, over the presence of around 20 unelected members in his team enjoying status of ministers. Tania Idris was Khan's special assistant on Digital Pakistan Initiative, while Dr. Zafar Mirza was his key person on National Health Services. Their resignations were subsequently accepted by the Prime Minister. Notifications issued by the Cabinet Division proved that. The resignations of the two came in the backdrop of intense criticism from the opposition after the government made public assets and dual nationalities of Khan's 20 assistants and special assistants. Still, Khan's team of advisors includes 6 dual nationality holders and 1 foreign national. With voices gaining momentum over Imran's misrule, there are even talks that Shahid Afridi, yes, you heard that right, Shahid Afridi could be the next prime ministerial candidate. Well, once again, Pakistan Army will get another cricketer to make a scapegoat of its own follies and fallacies. Well, we'll talk about this with our guest in the studio. Joining me is Ambassador Ashok Sajjanha, former diplomat, Major General Dr. G.G. Dwivedi, Global and Strategic Affairs expert, Professor Madhav Nalapat, Editorial Director of the Sunday Guardian, and last but not the least, Sumit, political analyst. Professor Nalapat, Shahid Afridi's name is already doing the rounds that he's going to be putting his hand up, or rather, he doesn't even need to put his hand up to become the next prime minister. It's like trying to figure out who the next James Bond is going to be, is what it seems like. It's actually a mockery, but at the same time, there have been reports. Very authentic reports that Imran Khan is on his way out. A lot of important ministerial posts have been taken over by the army, and they have started excluding Imran Khan from some of the more important meetings, since the last few months.
Well, the whole purpose of Imran Khan coming forward was basically to camouflage the fact that Pakistan has become a Wahhabi state, and Imran Khan was supposed to be the moderate face of Pakistan. I mean, you can, what he calls Naya Pakistan. And Imran Khan was supposed to launch a drive to make Pakistan once again the darling of the Western countries. Don't forget, for many decades, Pakistan was sustained, funded, financed by the Western countries led by the United States and the UK. In fact, Pakistan was created by the UK. Now, poor Imran seems to have failed in that. Despite all his charm, despite the fact that he has got so many connections in so many parts of the world, including in India, where there are several good friends of his, he has failed. So now there are some geniuses in the army believe that, well, cricket is so popular, in the world, and sportsmen are so popular. Americans love sportsmen, the British love cricket, so then maybe, and even the Indians love cricket. So supposing we have a cricketer, maybe he'll be more successful in presenting this charming face of Pakistan. The problem is the reality of Pakistan beats any effort at camouflage by the military.
Right, and Sumit, there's been rampant corruption in Pakistan. The army has not been happy. In fact, some of his own party members in the Tehreek-e-Insaf have, gone on to express dissonance over the decisions that Imran Khan has taken. What do you make? Where is this Imran Khan headed? Pakistan is a land of coup d'etats. They've had premiers and prime ministers and presidents who've been, punished and ousted by the army. What kind of a bleak future is Imran Khan looking at? Because as is the government that he was running and the way he was running was not doing its job properly, and the army, the mother of all things in Pakistan, was not happy with it.
I think the point here is very simple. What Pakistan army, they've graduated now. They don't want puppets, they want scarecrows. Because the scarecrow cannot move. Puppets, at least when you move them, they haath pair kuch hilate hain. So now this 17-year-old, allegedly, because Afridi is 17 for last 27 years. So he is their new scarecrow, which they will implant in the chair of the Prime Minister. And Imran Khan, if he's lucky, he'll survive. I mean, let God be with him. Else in Pakistan, the history is contrary to survival. So either you get killed by your people, you're hanged, or your successor makes sure he kills you in the broad daylight. That's what Pakistan has been. Now, we need the problem is much complexer. Look at some of the economic parameters of Pakistan. For example, this Dr. Zafar Mirza resigning and saying that, Pakistan people deserve much better healthcare. Look at the astonishing facts. $151 million, Keval. $151 million of health budget for 22 crore people. What is our health budget? $9 billion. They have done 1.9 million tests. We have done 20 million tests. With the capacity of ramping our tests to around 1 million per day, we make more than 500,000 PPs. They don't even make one. Right?
Yeah, and Imran Khan did take upon Twitter to criticize India in its fight against COVID.
And that's the point I'm trying to make. Now we make PPEs. Now this Mirza was also accused of importing vitamins and HCQ from India, which he did for the people of Pakistan. Now, if that is the plight of the situation, your foreign exchange reserves are all-time low, less than $10 billion. You have a budget to army of $8 billion, in which $2 billion are given as pension. Health budget is $151 million. $2 billion का फौजियों को pension मिलता है. $300 million of they get tax rebates and benefits, and they pay $2 to $4 billion to buy Chinese toys which are outdated, used by China. With these, and there's the economic forum which is being made, and instantly the army personals are heading that forum. And to add to salt to the injury, Vineet, this Fauji Tanzim does $20 billion of business in Pakistan. They don't pay a nickel in tax. That is the plight of Pakistan economy. That is where Pakistan is headed. And Imran Khan kya koi kuch nahi kar sakta. That is why they need one scarecrow goes, another is implanted. By this time, they'll be also looking for a third person, because Afridi again will have a life of 1 or 2 years. It's a very simple model. We need to put everything on Imran, then Afridi, then on somebody else. If God is willing, they will survive. If they do not, well, we always have a new person. As simple as that. The show goes on. Army continues its loot. They are richer by the day. They make more and more money. And the poor people of Pakistan suffer, and suffer.
Right, Ambassador Sajjanhar, as is in Pakistan, so elected parliamentarians in Pakistan, they don't have the expertise, that they are given. Even elected parliamentarians do not know anything about finance and technology, and yet they're handed those ministries. But in this case, Imran Khan had been giving these short stints to NRIs and people who did not live in Pakistan on a touch and go basis. This was obviously going to bust one day or the other. And at the same time, this is a whole new level of, taking your politics and your people for granted.
No, absolutely. I think what do you need a cabinet for if you are having 20 advisors? It really means that you do not have confidence in your elected representatives. After all, what is democracy supposed to be about? It is that power rests with resides in the elected representatives, because it is what the people want. That is what needs to be implemented. That is what needs to be taken forward. And here, if you are superimposing advisors, and what it comes out from this, that it was their personal assets. They apparently were huge personal assets, and that is what has created so much of dissonance and so much of unhappiness amongst the people of the country, that their personal assets, and I'm sure the remuneration that they were getting, the facilities, the privileges that were being accorded to them, that also must have been huge. And with a country whose financial condition is, which is in such dire straits, and for them to be getting all this money and nothing to show for it, because how has it in terms of, this lady was in charge of digitization, and Mr. Mirza was in charge of healthcare. Even as far as healthcare is concerned, he is being criticized for so many corrupt practices, so many corrupt initiatives that he has taken in terms of importing PPEs and masks and other things and making a lot of money on that. So I think if you have to have people, they should be of impeccable integrity and honesty. Then only they'll be able to inspire confidence amongst the people. As far as Imran Khan himself is concerned, Vineet, I think what was required really was a figurehead by the army, so that the army has all the power and none of the responsibility. All the responsibilities taken by this fall guy, who, meaning he will have to bear all the brunt of attack from the opposition or elsewhere. As the last point I want to make is, as far as his being acceptable to America or to Britain, etc., I think right now what Pakistan wants is that acceptability is only in Beijing. If you can get a person who's acceptable to Beijing, that is quite enough, because all their money, finances, funding, everything is coming from Beijing. So anyone who would be willing to do Beijing's obey the line coming from Beijing, I think that is going to be acceptable to the army and everyone else. So we'll have to see how far, how long Imran Khan. We have been hearing about this, that his days are numbered, but he has still managed to continue so far. But let us see how long he can continue. And I'm sure there are many. If merit is no consideration for getting to this position, then of course there are 180 million people in Pakistan, and anyone can really be picked up and put in that position, because it is not the people's support, or it is not merit, or it is not any talent in any area that will commend an individual to occupy that position.
General Dwivedi, when Imran Khan was in the opposition, he had criticized, the then government for having foreign nationals who were holding public offices. But in his cabinet today, there are at least 7 to 10 people who are either dual nationals or are permanent residents of countries from outside of Pakistan. Do you think it really doesn't matter in Pakistan, because you could say one thing and get away with another, but at the same time, when it comes to Imran Khan, it really doesn't matter, because the army is planning to let go of him at any juncture now.
Well, Vineet, firstly, I'd like to make 2-3 points about the Pakistan system. Please understand that the Pakistan Prime Minister serves at the pleasure of the Chief of the Army Staff. So it is purely at his mercy that he is brought in or booted out. Secondly, Pakistan Army has now learned its lessons. It doesn't want to be in the driver's seat. It wants poster boys. So posters are changed very frequently. So Imran poster now has outlived its utility. Maybe now Afridi poster may be more befitting. Third point is that Pakistan has, among the global corruption index, Pakistan improving its positions. In 2018, it was at 117, and now 2020, it's at 120. So therefore, it's a work in progress, and they are becoming more and more corrupt nation. And interestingly, judiciary is the most corrupt. Then comes education and health. Now let me come to the army and the equation of the army with China, because China is the only country that matters. PLA and Pakistan Army have very, very old relationship, and that's what matters, because their relationship actually transcends the government-to-government relationship. So as far as Beijing is concerned, anyone that army appoints will foot the bill. Now there are two very important points. What are the connections between the, what we call is the foreign residents living in Pakistan and vice versa? You see, every Pakistan chief after retirement generally heads to UK and London, and lately they have also started becoming very fond of Australia. These foreign, elements, they help in money laundering. They also help in, their connections, their relatives who are abroad. They are actually compute for all the money laundering and such like activities. The last point I wish to make is that Pakistan cannot be salvaged by any posted person, because army is in thick of everything. You imagine CPEC, $60 billion is actually being handled by a lieutenant general. The dam construction of $9 billion, lately we are talking about Pasha Dam, again is headed by army. So army is in every corner, in every scoop. So therefore, I think to expect anything out of a civilian prime minister is a misnomer. It's all that army is calling the shots, and that's what actually matters. And army is actually handling the economy of Pakistan.
Absolutely. And Professor Nalabad, but Shahid Afridi would be a peculiar choice. If you talk about Imran Khan, he does have some political pedigree. He did enter politics in the late 90s, and he's in fact struggled to get here. Even if it's been with a lot of help, he's still managed to make some struggle and name for himself in the particular political echelons. But, Shahid Afridi is going to be a new law altogether for Pakistan, even for Pakistan.
Well, I'd only like to say that, as the general mentioned, if the army chief in Pakistan disagrees with you, well then it will be Afridi or it will be anybody else. I simply want to point out, Beneath, the relationship with China is the monopoly of the military. The military does not want any civilian government to get close to China. And you will recall that when Chinese leaders, call the Pakistani leaders, for the sake of form, they call the prime minister. But actually, the real important person is the army chief. And the detailed discussions are held, whether it's by the foreign minister or the president of China, or the finance minister of China. It is held by the army, between the Chinese and the army chief. The poor prime minister and commerce minister of Pakistan, basically their wives go shopping and they go along with their wives. So this is the reality. The military defends its turf very clearly. They don't want any civilian involved. Well, how are the Americans concerned? One, of course, very correctly said, the Pakistanis are extensive investments in the Western world, and they want to protect that investment. They don't want to have sanctions placed on them so that their poor children who are living like millionaires will be kicked out of their houses, and the tens of millions of pounds and dollars and euros that they have will be taken over. That's one thing. Secondly, IMF, they would like loans from the IMF. The Chinese are not going to give you any kind of grant. So you need money to pay the Chinese back. For that, you need the IMF. For that, you need America. And very importantly, Imran Khan, is being used by the Pakistan military to sell this idea of the Taliban getting into Kabul. And they've been fairly successful at it. Even the Trump administration has fallen for it and has gone in for a completely one-sided deal with the Taliban. And once the Taliban go to Kabul, I can tell you, one of the first countries to be hit by the new wave of terrorism will be the United States. And that will be thanks to Donald Trump. And whichever government is facilitating the Taliban, first it was Clinton, now it is either Trump or it will probably be Trump. So the reality is, the civilian government deals with the rest of the world. Only the military deals with China. But I fully agree, Pakistan is a disaster in progress. It's not a work in progress, it's a disaster in progress. And frankly, the hopes and dreams of people, including many in India, that one day this will, suddenly Pakistan will go through a reformation, it will change, the military will be a real, genuine, professional military. And from the time of Zia-ul Haq, please don't forget, now you're talking about these advisors. What can the poor chaps do? They have to implement through the Pakistan system. And in the Pakistan system, the top positions, the middle positions are all held by people who are trained in the religious seminaries and the religious schools. According to Zia-ul Haq, a man trained in a religious school is worth much more than a graduate of any global university. So let me say, this is a work in progress. It's an ongoing disaster. And anybody who's got any illusions that this disaster can be prevented, I think is still living in a dream world.
Right. And Sumit, as long as, the skeletal remnants of what Zia-ul Haq permeated in the Pakistani army remain, there can be no change. You get an Afridi, you get an Imran Khan, you get a Rashid Latif, you get a Waqar Yunus. It really doesn't matter. They're all the birds of the same feather.
The point is very simple here, that the shots in Pakistan are called by the army and they needed scarecrows. Look at when Imran Khan, he came with a promise saying, Naya Pakistan will not take money, will liberate Pakistan. He has taken $30 billion, out of which $20 billion have gone to pay the EMIs of the loans. Now, what is Pakistan is typically called in debt financing. When I take a loan, not to pay my old loan, I take a loan to pay the EMI of the loan. That is the condition where Pakistan is today, with foreign exchange reserves less than 10 billion, food inflation of 24%, normal inflation of 15 to 18%. What do you see of a country with $151 million of medical budget? And incidentally, we need the propaganda or the alleged news that the COVID is lowering in Pakistan is all bullshit, because they are not doing enough tests. It's a very simple, aap test nahi karoge to COVID milega hi nahi. But that's how Pakistan is working. So now coming to the Afridi recently when it was in POK, he said, my grandfather is called Ghazi of Kashmir because he was involved in liberating this POK. He has got a khatab of Ghazi of Kashmir. So that day, he already signaled his inclination to this Wahhabi Jihadi militia, which is called Pakistan Army, and he's bringing his grandfather's legacy. He's of course, for last 27 years, he's 17-year-old. He will continue to be that. And that is the angle he's getting in. So his grandfather's legacy, Ghazi of Kashmir, liberating POK, is the new poster boy of the Pakistan army, and they will place him. He will have his utility for 1 or 2 or 3 years. But if you look at the economic conditions of the Pakistan, they're allies with China's generals minting the money. So nothing much is going to change. But for us, Pakistan was and will be a pertinent threat. I'm again of the view we have to break Pakistan into 4 to liberate our future generations from this sword looming on our head. Because nothing is going to change in Pakistan. There is no money, there is no desire, there is no politician, there is no political will, and the army has to take everything in Pakistan. Look, $20 billion of business and they don't pay tax. Though $1 billion go as a pension to 4Gs when the national budget is $151 million for medicine. Now, where does it happen on this earth? $300 million of your retirement benefits to army. Your medical budget is $151 million for the whole country. And you're claiming your COVID is going down, sir. You're not testing. You're letting the common Pakistani die. That is what you care. You don't care for them. फौज और उनका कुंबा सही रहना चाहिए, बाकी आते हैं जाते हैं. That's what Pakistan is.
Ambassador Sajana, do you think that Pakistan too has made a grave mistake by putting all their eggs in one basket? I'm talking about the Belt and Road Initiative of China. China is in fact nobody's friend. They have invested more money in Iran than they have in Pakistan, and that to Pakistan has been an eye-opener, because they thought that China is in fact like a big brother to them, but only to find out that China is serving its own purpose, its own ends, and Pakistan is just a mere tool.
That is been the attitude of China in all the countries, wherever they have been. Basically, it is their own game plan that they have worked to accomplish. It has not really been of any benefit to the recipient country or to the host country. There has not been any particular employment generation that has come there, because it's all the Chinese workers who come and work here. They're the Chinese engineers who come here. As far as the utility of these projects is concerned, it is more required by the Chinese rather than by the local governments. Also, in terms of the terms on which the loans are given, they are much stiffer than the loans that are given by World Bank or ADB or whatever. So I think the recipient countries are really not receiving much benefits at all from these. But I think basically what you have to see is, as far as Pakistan is concerned, from its point of view, it has no choice at all.
Right. Ambassador Sajana, sorry to interject. We've completely run out of time. But gentlemen, thank you so much for being a part of this great debate.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.